Welcome to One on One with Montgomery County Executive Ike Leggett. I'm Lorna Virgili, and thank you for joining us. Well, Mr. Leggett, welcome. Thank you for seeing us one more time.
Thank you for having me. I'm delighted to be here.
It's a little warm in this room today, but let's start with the fact that it's been an interesting month. And you can take a deep breath now. The budget is done, and so it's...
Budgets are never done.
That's right. It's never done. But at least this portion of it is done. But let's talk about the vote that County Council executed regarding the EMS, the ambulance reimbursement fee that you proposed. Went back to County Council. They approved it. And I just wanted to hear your reaction on it.
Well, clearly I'm delighted that we approved, at least the council approved it. I think when you look at the facts and weigh all the evidence as to why I submitted this, the need for it, and the changes that we made, I think that those things are appropriate for where we are today. And I think we made a very strong case that clearly there's a tremendous need for this, given the changes that were made to the teacher pension shift in Annapolis, that although there are some softeners and offsets for FY13, but if you look beyond FY13, that cost continue to rise in Montgomery County. It's a huge impact for us. And so my belief is that when voters looked at this a couple of years ago, we were not dealing with the same situation that we see today. And in public service, in politics today, and in governance today, 2 years ago is a lifetime. You really re-elect an entire Congress in 2 years, and an awful lot has happened in that relatively short period of time. So I thought it was incumbent upon me as county executive to say to the people here in Maryland, Montgomery County, that you made a decision 2 years ago, but here are some circumstances and conditions that I think warrant a re-evaluation of that. Now you have a choice, to either raise taxes, to seek greater efficiencies in areas in which we've already cut to the tune of $2.6 billion, or find other revenues in a non-taxable source. And this is a situation where virtually every community around the Washington metropolitan area, throughout Maryland, Virginia, all have this reimbursement from insurance for ambulance service. A large part of that comes from the federal government through Medicaid and Medicare. We can't bill them unless we first bill ourselves in terms of ambulance reimbursement. This is something that we've already paid for. And so you paid for it in your insurance premiums. It's covered substantially by the federal government. All of the jurisdictions are doing it. We have a great need for additional revenue in Montgomery County. There has been a tremendous shift from Annapolis that has impacted us. So why not consider this at least? And I think the council agreed with that. And given the changes that we made, I think they acted favorably and wisely in this situation.
Several council members did not vote in favor, including, I believe, the council president. And their argument at the time has been, well, what you mentioned, the voters already took it to the polls and they denied it. Why are we doing it again? You proposed some amendments to the bill itself. So how is it different today from when it was back in 2010?
Well, first of all, the conditions are different. We have the shift in responsibilities on the pension. We have a change in the MOE law. So the conditions, one, are different. Secondly, there are some changes to the bill itself because people were concerned that there will be ongoing discussions. There will be some way, shape, or form that people get a bill. We've changed that to make certain that that's absolutely clear in the law. People had argued that there is no intermediary and no person that they feel comfortable with potentially to discuss any potential challenges or issues that they may have. We provided an ombudsman for that. People have argued over the past about what is the conversation like between the people calling the EMS services. By law, they're not even allowed to ask a person about their insurance coverage. So those are the kinds of things that we've changed, and we've made it abundantly clear that we are simply seeking reimbursement from those with insurance and from Medicare and Medicaid. If you do not have that, then clearly you will not get a bill, you will not be discussed, and it's a seamless transition. When you go into the hospital today and you sign your normal papers and they ask you about your insurance at the receptionist desk or whatever, they take down that information. They will simply send part of that information to your insurance coverage for the ambulance service. That's it. You don't have to sign any papers. You don't have to get into a discussion. Nothing. It's a seamless transition. Now, the argument, again, that 2 years, that some way is undemocratic. Well, that's quite democratic. To go back to people after a 2-year stint to say, essentially, things have changed. It is for them to weigh whether those change warranted. And that's why we have a vote, and that's why we look at things. Again, you look around in 2 years, an awful lot has happened. When you look at the U.S. Congress, you re-elect or elect an entire Congress every 2 years. And that's based on our democracy. But to say that you made a decision under different circumstances 2 years ago, on the conditions that are not the same as we have today, that in some way you're bound in perpetuity not to ask those questions, and there's not been significant change. Keep in mind the language that we used when we were going through the Maintenance of Effort Challenge. The language that was used by many of the same local officials who said there was not sufficient change said that this was doomsday, this was catastrophic change, that this was unprecedented, that it would ruin the county's finances for a short term, not just a short term, but the long term. Doomsday, catastrophic change, ruination of the county's budget. This is what some of the same people who now oppose that said going through the process. So if you have doomsday, catastrophic changes, if that doesn't warrant a relook at, I don't know what does.
This was challenged 2 years ago by the volunteer firefighters. What happens if it gets challenged again and ends up on the ballot? What is your hope from county residents regarding what it was just approved by county council?
Well, my assumption always was that it would get back on the ballot. But my belief has been that that if people are enlightened, which I think that they are, people understand what's at stake here. They now have an opportunity to look at what we talked about 2 years ago and compare it to today. 2 years ago, I said if we did not have this, it would slow our progress of providing much of the public safety services that we need. That happened. 2 years ago, I said that unless we had this additional revenue, it may mean that we'd have to reduce library hours. That happened. 2 years ago, I said that we may have to reduce employees' salaries, cut an awful lot in our programs and services. All of those things happened. Now that those things have happened, now we see what the future's like. Now you have a better understanding of the challenges and the position of the county going forward. I think wise people will look at this and say, wow, I think he's made a pretty good case about this.
And this represents approximately, what, $18 million
yes,
a year?
$18 million in the economy, given the flexibility and the challenges we have, is an awful lot of money. That's $180 million over 10 years.
We're going to take a short break right now. We'll be right back with Montgomery County Executive Ike Leggett. And next, we'll be talking about the approved FY13 budget. Welcome back to 101 with Montgomery County Executive Ike Leggett. I'm Lorna Virgili, and thank you for watching us. Mr. Leggett, let's talk about the other item that got approved by County Council, which was your proposed FY13 budget. $4.56 or $6 billion, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. They made some changes to their priorities as well. We're going to talk about what it's in the budget, but what it's not that you wanted and it did not happen.
Well, overall, they approved pretty much the budget as submitted. There were some changes. If you look at the budget, 100% going over, I probably think somewhere around 98% of what we recommended is probably approved in this budget. There are some differences, and some of those are minor, some of them are fairly significant. One area that I think that I had some challenges with was a slight change in the fees for fuel energy. They reduced that somewhat, and the reduction came as a result of changing monies or removing monies from some of the reserves that we had or from the trust fund for OPEB, and taking away some of the discretionary funds that we had for outgoing years in health care that we've saved. The reason I say that is because we're not going to get another chance to look at the fuel energy tax. What we did this year is going to stay with for a long period of time. It will simply place more pressure on increasing potentially the property tax or other taxes. And I think that's less of a priority and not as balanced as it is with the fuel energy tax. See, the fuel energy tax goes to everyone. Businesses, it goes to the federal government, it goes to a large number of associations, charitable foundations that right now do not pay taxes or very low taxes in Montgomery County. You're able to collect that through the fuel energy tax. So a good part of that really comes from the federal government with some of these large institutions here. The property tax is disproportionate on residents and some businesses. So I think when you look at the budget, the decisions they've made, as either take monies from other sources, reduce that tax by 10%, and you really are not making a significant reduction in it. I mean, if they came up with a plan that said, okay, we found a large amount of revenue somewhere else, or we've made sufficient cuts somewhere else that we're going to substantially reduce this or eliminate it, then I think that's something that most people can understand and respect to some degree. But the minor changes that were made are not enough to placate people who are concerned about the tax, nor is it enough to offset the revenue in other places that you're going to lose. So you're going to lose $10, $15 million that you're going to otherwise need going forward, because we have an awful lot of pressures in it for the future years. So that's one that I think I had some problems with. There are some challenges also in the capital budget portion of it. I think the decision to provide revenues for the purple line, that is to ensure that we have the south entrance of Bethesda Metro, I think is ill-timed. It's not something that is needed. And in order to get there, you essentially had to gut a large part of maintenance, repairs, and other projects around the county that I think needed those resources. It's going to take us a number of years, 2015 at the earliest, before there's ever any construction money going forward. We could have waited on that, and that to me was not required at this time.
Let's talk about what did get funded, like the schools, 100% funded, plus the maintenance of effort obligation has been fulfilled as well. Same thing with fire and rescue, public safety. They still are going to receive your proposed increases, correct?
Yeah, I'm delighted that we were able to provide a maintenance of effort budget. We were able to increase the fire and rescue of public safety. For example, we'll have an additional 40 plus officers in public safety. We'll be able to reduce significantly the overtime in the fire and rescue system by having some additional classes and personnel to work in those areas as well. There are some programs, certainly in the libraries, whereby we are restoring a substantial portion there as well to increase library hours, facilitate additional material, and to have more staff available in the libraries to help the many patrons that we have. And we're addressing some of the concerns with youth in terms of a increased funding for our positive youth initiatives and to get at some of the programs that go to the core of recreation and challenges for our youth that are out there, as well as seniors. So I'm delighted about those things that were approved. Public safety, the improvement of the 100% of the maintenance of effort budget for education, the monies that are going to our college system, the libraries, youth and seniors, I think are good statements for the county and are consistent with both my vision for the county as well as the county council. But overall, I think the council did a very good job.
Did they have to carve out about what, $27 million regarding the teacher pension shift from the state?
Well, it will be, but not all of that will hit us in the first year. The challenge, I think there's a gap of about $7 or $8 million remaining between the, quote, softness that we have, the softeners, and the impact of it. The first year, we don't get the entire impact of it. And there are some things that we can rely on the first year. But after the first year, those things are not included in the budget, and therefore that gap becomes wider. And so I think as you go forward, there's probably only about $8 million that you can count on, and that number runs up to $47 million. So there's a gap in about the fourth year, about $40 million.
The impact from Annapolis, how huge was it actually this year?
Well, we're going to get some additional monies as it relates to construction dollars. We are hit in Annapolis, from Annapolis, by the increase of taxes for those making $100,000 or more. We're increased from the teacher pension, and there's some inflexible or lack of flexibility in the rules related to maintenance of efforts. All of those things, I think, are challenges for us, especially the teacher pension and the lack of flexibility, if you will, in the maintenance of effort. But overall, I think for education, we come out okay. I always thought that we should have maintenance of effort. I just thought that some of the rules should be changed as it relates to that. And the teacher pension shift, I thought was done, quote, too fast. And there are some changes that I would have made, even if we were going to go forward with that, that could have lessened the burden on the county.
The tax hike to the higher earners, 100,000 plus, approximately 40% of the funding is going to come from Montgomery County to the state.
Yeah, understand what we're doing here now. We will pay a disproportionate amount of the taxes coming from Montgomery County in comparison to our population. That's on one hand. On the other hand, we will have a greater impact of the, quote, cuts by way of the teacher pension and other things. So we're hit from both ends. We are paying more and we're receiving less. And one of the other things that did not happen in Annapolis, which I'm very disappointed about, that we do not have a new funding source for transportation. And transportation in Montgomery County is our lifeblood for growth and development to occur in the county. We have the Seneca Valley Science Corridor that we need to improve. We have the East County Science Corridor. We have challenges in the White Flint area, Shady Grove, and many other areas around the county. And so our economic development for the future can be stymied unless we address the transportation needs. And we can't do it alone. We need help from the state in order to accomplish this.
Let's go back to public safety and the budget. Was it 58 new positions that are going to be for the police department, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And do you have an idea at this point where those are going to be throughout the county? How is going to be the hiring process and all of that?
Well, 11 of the positions will be into the new combined system for call taking, that is 411. The other 40 plus positions will be assigned by the police chief. One of the things that I recognized early on in this process, that I'm not a police officer, a police chief. We've hired an outstanding police chief in Tom Manger. It is for him to make the decision about deployment, where our greatest needs are, the geographical areas of the county. It is for me to help implement that plan and for me to find the resources in order to do it. But for me to manage that and to get in operational details, I think is a decision that should be made by the police chief.
How about the consolidation of the 911 call takers?
Well, we have that in place, and that will require additional 11 additional personnel in order to do that. So that's significant for us as well.
Okay, we're going to take a short break and we'll be right back with Montgomery County Executive Ike Leggett. Don't go away. Welcome back to One-on-One with Montgomery County Executive Ike Leggett. I'm Lorna Virgili, and thanks for continuing to watch. All right, so let's talk about now, something a little bit more fun. Recently, you were a teacher for day at Mario Loiterman Middle School in Silver Spring. What was that experience like to go back, you're a professor, university professor, but going back to the classroom?
Well, there's a difference between a law professor teaching 28 and 30-year-old adults versus an elementary school teacher teaching elementary or middle level kids. That's a real challenge, but it was exhilarating, rewarding in many ways, but also a real challenge. You know, I arrived about 7:15, 7:20 in the morning, and I left about 4:30, 4:20 in the afternoon.
So you got a good feel for what the day is like.
I actually did the day, so they didn't send me in to co-teach or to watch a teacher and simply sit in the classroom. They essentially gave me the lesson plan, the instruction for the day, and said essentially go do it. There was a teacher in the room, of course, but I did the teaching. I had 4 separate classes that I taught, and the challenge for me was I was teaching. I thought I would be teaching government or history or something that I would be much more familiar with. But they gave me an English class, Shakespeare. As you like it, and it was a challenge because we had a lesson plan that was pretty rigorous. The students were already engaged in this plan, and one of the challenges for us is that we must accomplish a number of things within the time allotted, and you have to get the rhythm of accomplishing that with young people who are very active, large numbers of questions, and trying to balance all of those things with the time frame. I had to do the attendance, had to collect homework, had to distribute homework, and then go through a lesson plan using the technology they have, plus the substantive information from the play, and different strips and different scenes within that, and coordinating that with the technology. So it's a real challenge to do all of those things, and
well,
I left with a great appreciation for the teachers.
Oh yeah, and the new technology, it's different, completely different from when we went to middle school. And how are the kids? How are the students? Were they a little bit intimidated about having the county executive teaching English?
Well, I didn't know that they would know me, but for some reason they knew who I was when I walked in the classroom. So the students in the classroom were unusually quiet for some reason, at least for the first part of it. And they were quiet and probably on a little better behavior than they normally would be. But it worked out fairly well. I think that it was wonderful in that sense that we got a lot accomplished. I also had to do the counseling of students, makeup classes later in session. So right during the lunch hour, we were working with students who came in for lunch, during their lunch period. And also did the hall monitoring out with the teacher, making sure that students were where they should be. So I did everything that a regular teacher would do during the day.
That sounds like you had a really good time.
Oh yeah.
Let's talk about now about the rapid transit system. Recently, the task force, your task force, gave you the details of it. 160 miles will be covered somewhere in the county at some point. Give us a little bit of information about that, and also where the money's going to come from to fund it.
Well, first of all, I want to congratulate the task force, Mark Winston, Tom Street, and the entire array of people who were engaged in it. This was a first-rate caliber task force. We had people with expertise, with passion, and with leadership skills to tackle a very difficult issue. And they've come forward with a wonderful plan, a 160-mile comprehensive plan for the county. Now, the good thing about this plan is that you can implement it in different stages, so it's not as though you need to go out tomorrow and spend $2 billion on executing a 160-mile plan. You can do this in stages over periods of time, and you can select segments of the plan to implement consistent with the resources that you may have available in order to address it. There are several areas that I think the county particularly needs to look at. For example, the Carter City Transit area, because we have large amounts of construction tied to that, future job growth that's tied to that. We look at the changes that we're making in that area. If we don't solve the transportation challenges there, then it could stymie a level of growth and development that will eventually bring 45 to 50,000 jobs to Montgomery County, high-paying jobs. So we have to solve it there. We look at the White Flint area down 355 all the way down to Bethesda Naval. That's a huge economic growth area with large flocks of additional people who have come into that center. And then, of course, you look for the future, a $3.3 billion project out along Route 29 that's tied to technology there as well. And so we need to address that, and I think the prioritization of those things will be important for us.
What would be next steps? When would construction start? Some people are pretty excited about it.
Well, what will happen is that I will take this report, talk to my finance people here in the county, evaluate it from a financial standpoint to look to make certain that we feel okay about some of the assumptions, look at it with my transportation people, and then make a recommendation to the council to move forward. Now, the challenge for us is how we're going to pay for it, and what is the first prioritization, and how we move forward in implementing that. But for me, this is a no-brainer. We will do this. The time and the resources will simply dictate how soon and what cost we will do it in.
And according to plan, these are pretty cool, comfortable, and sleek and nicely designed vehicles that the county is looking into.
Well, if you look at many of them, they look just like a light rail system.
It does. Well, thank you for joining us. I guess we'll see you again in a month from now, and it will be a lot warmer. Have a good summer, I suppose. Like I said at the beginning of the show, you can take a deep breath, and now the budget is approved.
I can breathe a little bit easier, but not easy.
Thank you, Mr. Leggett.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you for watching. Remember, all information regarding the county, visit our website, montgomerycountymd.gov. I'm Lorna Virgili, and thank you.